Joe Biden and Kamala Harris yesterday were talking about expanding broadband to everyone throughout the country. Now, the federal government doing that, probably a bad idea, but there are some interesting caveats/variables that I feel like you should know about and hear about. Watch this first from the president yesterday talking about federal broadband internet, high-speed internet. It's a necessity, like the telephone, says Joe Biden. Watch this.
You know, the need for high-speed internet is a little bit like what used to be probably what my grandfather talked about, the need to have a telephone. It's pretty consequential and only going to keep growing, this need. High-speed internet is not a luxury any longer. It's a necessity. And that's why the bipartisan infrastructure law included $65 billion to make sure we expand access to broadband internet in every region of the country, urban, suburban, and rural.
We'll stop it there. There's a couple more seconds he's got there. But the one thing that I heard there in just my initial reaction to every government doing anything is broadband is going to get worse. That's what I heard when Joe Biden said, we're going to expand broadband to everyone in the country. Now, obviously, the federal government overhauling broadband is not going to turn out well. It's going to be a massive waste of money. The internet speed and service will probably be substantially worse. And nobody's going to say anything about it. We're just going to let it happen and just going to chug along. However, there are some interesting components to this broadband argument. While I'm while we should all be massively against the federal government doing it, because the federal government, again, is not good at doing things, which is the premise of this entire show, basically, or my, at least, view on the world. The government's bad at doing things and should therefore do less things. But when it comes to the federal government, obviously not good. However, there are some arguments to be made on the municipal level, the city, local level, providing Wi-Fi/internet/broadband services. The argument being made there is it's basically utility. The city manages water, electricity in a lot of places, depending on how your electricity is set up. In California, it is a crony capitalism scheme going on, so they manage the electricity, but they manage utilities. The city that you live in manages the utilities that you use. Internet nowadays is so ubiquitous and so everywhere all the time, and everybody's using it all the time, and it seems like a pretty big necessity. I agree with the president there that the internet is a necessity. It would seem that some instances that the municipal cities and possibly even counties could provide broadband for a price to the user on the utility side. Now, not advocating for more government anything. I'm just saying it's an interesting argument to be made, and one that I think has some sort of ground. If the city that you live in wants to provide internet, that's fine. I don't care at all. However, this is also pretty interesting. There are 18 states, if you don't know this, that have total restrictive legislation against broadband networks in the U.S. So, even if the city that you live in or the city that I live in wanted to say, hey, internet is a utility now, broadband is something that's necessary for everybody here, we're going to go ahead and do a municipal broadband system and charge our users like we would charge them for their water or charge them for their trash pickup or their electricity or whatever it is that they charge for. They're not allowed to do that in several different states. Now, while I'm against federal government pushing things on, I'm also against a lot of state legislations explicitly restricting things without good cause for it. So why are some of these states restricting broadband connectivity through the municipalities? Well, probably because of crony capitalism. Now, if you're not familiar with crony capitalism, it's capitalism interjecting itself in the politics of the particular region they're working in. Basically, the lobby for your big connectivity broadband companies, your AT&Ts, your Verizon, your Spectrums, your Charters, all of those companies lobby those states' governments to say, please don't allow the cities to do this on their own because that would put us out of business. Now, there are some infrastructure comments to be made. Yeah, there's arguments of those companies have the infrastructure set up, and then would you lease that infrastructure and all that sort of stuff. All of that is what it is. The bottom line is this: it's weird that several states in the country explicitly don't allow local communities to purchase their own broadband. So while the president and issuing this federal broadband whatever is going to turn out bad for everyone, because it'll get worse and it'll be more expensive to the taxpayer, it is interesting that some municipalities can't do it. And I'm not necessarily opposed to them trying it. I'm more accepting of government, quote unquote, programs, if you're going to call it that, at the local city level and the community level. And the reason being the obvious one is you have interaction with the people who are making those decisions.